All right, we've made it all the way down now to Module 9, and in this module I want to talk to you about how to work with your sheet tabs that you see at the bottom when you open a workbook. You can actually add sheets, you can delete those sheets, and you can rename those sheets. Let's go through and talk a little bit about how sheets work, and I will show you how to add, delete, and rename those sheet tabs. We have an exercise here that has multiple sheets with information on them, and I want to take a peek at what this looks like before we get started. This is the Australian division of the company, and if you notice, they've listed each item that they're selling, the figures for quarters 1 through 4 here, and they've just totaled them down on row 9. Now notice that we're on sheet 1 at the bottom. Let's see what's on sheet 2. All I have to do is click on it, and I'll flip to that sheet. This looks like the European division. If you notice, the setup's the exact same, except these numbers are different, which obviously changes our totals. Let's see what's on sheet 3. Looks like the North American division. Sheet 4 looks like the South American division. And sheet 5 looks like a summary. What we're going to end up doing in section 3 is writing a three-dimensional formula here. That would be a formula that goes to the other 4 sheets and gives me a total here on this 5th sheet. But meanwhile, let's go back to sheet 1 for a moment. If I asked you which sheet was Europe, would you remember that it's sheet 2? Probably not, so the best thing to do is go ahead and rename your sheet tab so that you know what's on each sheet. There are a couple ways to do this, but the easiest way is to double click on the words sheet 1 at the bottom. That will select it, and then you can type right over it. I'll just go ahead and put each of the sheet tab names in here. Sheet 2 is Europe. Looks like sheet 3 is North America. Looks like sheet 4 is South America. And sheet 5 is Summary. Now we know that when we click on the Europe sheet, we're going to see the European division of the company. There are some things you can do as far as adding sheets. Let's say you wanted to add a sheet in between North and South America. If I select the South American sheet, I can right click and I can insert a sheet in front of that sheet. It will ask you when you do this, what is it you're trying to insert, and you want a worksheet. So I'll just click OK, and now you'll see it's using the name sheet 1 since we're not using that name anymore. Now there is a plus sign all the way over here, and if I click on that plus sign, you'll notice I've added another sheet there. So that's another way to put a sheet in front of the sheet that you're currently on. If you want to delete a sheet, you just right click on that sheet tab and you can choose delete from the list. If you delete a sheet, you cannot undo it. Just know that. I'm going to go ahead and delete sheet 1 as well. I'm going to right click and choose delete, and now that sheet's gone too. Now I do have the ability to move the sheets around. What if I decided that I'd like North America to be the first sheet? Notice how if I just click on it, I can drag the sheets left or right. You'll see a little down arrow, and when you let go, that's where it's going to be. Let's say I move this back, and I'll move it to the right of South America. Be really careful about moving your sheets on the other side of summary, because when we talk about our three-dimensional formulas, we're going to be saying that we want to add a range of sheets, and if you've moved this on the other side, it won't be in the range. Just be really careful about that. That's a quick way to go ahead and add sheets, delete sheets, and rename and move your sheets around. Why don't we go ahead now and go over into section 2, and I'll show you some additional sheet tab options you have. Welcome back. This is section 2 of module 9, and in this particular module we are talking about working with the sheet tabs at the bottom of each of your workbooks. We've already learned how to add some sheet tabs, delete them, and rename them. Now I'd like to go in and show you some of the additional sheet tab options you have when you're working with each of those sheets. We've already talked about some of the options you can do with sheets as far as adding sheets. We talked about deleting sheets and renaming them, but let's go ahead and look at all the options available when you're working with your sheet tabs. If you're on any sheet tab and you right click your mouse, you're going to see a list of things you can do, starting with insert. We talked about the fact that you can insert a worksheet and it will actually go to the left of the sheet you have selected or in front of that sheet. You can also right-click on a sheet tab and delete it. Remember, if you delete it, you cannot get it back, so make sure that's really what you'd like to do. You can also rename a sheet. Choosing Rename this way just selects the sheet tab name, and that way you can type right over it. It's actually a little bit easier just to double-click on the sheet tab name to do the same thing. Here you can move or copy. We did talk about the fact that you can pick up a sheet tab and move it left or right, but let's look at the options when you go this way. Here what you'll see is this is the name of the file that you're working in, and these are the sheet tabs in that particular file. If I wanted to take South America, the one I'm clicked on, and move it to the very front, I would choose Australia because it says Before Sheet and then click OK, and now look how it's moved that sheet tab. Now I'm going to right click on that again and go back to Move or Copy because here's something that's really nice. Sometimes people ask me, can you take a sheet tab and actually copy it into another file like a blank workbook? And the answer is yes, you can. Let's say you want to copy South America, but this time what I want to do is put it in a new workbook. And I want to create a copy because I want to leave this one here and just make a copy in the new workbook. Now when I click OK, I want you to notice this is a brand new file. Notice it says Book 1 at the top, and notice we only have one sheet and it's the one called South America. That's a really great way, instead of copying and pasting. A lot of times what happens when you copy and paste the data on one sheet into another file, you lose all your formatting, you lose your column widths and all that. Doing it this way, you don't lose any of that. I'm going to go back and close this, and we won't save it, and then we'll be back on the file we were working in. Alright, I'm going to right click again on South America, and I want to just mention the view code. If you click on this, it's actually going to take you into an entirely different program called Visual Basic. And you do have the ability to write some what they call VBA code and stuff like that to make Excel do different things. But I don't want you to get lost in here because this is programming, and if you happen to click on it accidentally, just go ahead and hit the X and close out of it. It's not actually part of Excel. Alright, I'm going to right click again, and let me talk to you briefly about protecting the sheet. We will talk in a later module about protecting your file and protecting your sheet, but you do have the ability to create a password to put on this sheet so that when someone opens it, they have to know the password to get in. Notice you can also change the tab color. If there's a particular sheet, like maybe the summary sheet, and you'd like that sheet to stand out for some reason, change the tab color, and when you click on another tab, you'll see that there's where the color shows up. I can also hide a sheet. If you hide a sheet, you can see that it looks like the sheet is not even there. You can right-click and unhide a sheet. It will list the hidden sheets. You choose the one you want to unhide and you click OK. Some reasons for hiding a sheet might be, obviously you don't want someone to see that sheet. Let's say, for example, you've created a list with a drop-down, and this is a little more advanced than we are right now, but you can have drop-down lists in Excel. Well, those drop-down lists have to live somewhere. They can live on a sheet you've created, and then you hide the sheet so that others can't get in and actually mess with the list and screw it up. So that's a great example of why you might want to hide a sheet. Now I'm going to go back because you can also do one more thing. You can select all the sheets. And you can see when you do this that all of these turn white or they're selected so that whatever you do on one sheet now appears on all the sheets. To deselect all the sheets, you just click on any sheet tab and now you're on this one sheet tab only. Those are the options that you have when you're working with sheet tabs. Let's go ahead and wrap up this section, and I'm going to have you go over to section 3 where we're going to talk about three-dimensional formulas. We are going to wrap up Module 9 with Section 3 here. We've been talking about working with your sheet tabs, and now I want to talk to you a little bit about how three-dimensional formulas come into play. A three-dimensional formula is basically a formula that you write on one sheet, and it calculates data from other sheets and puts the answer on this sheet that you're on. And we call those 3D formulas or three-dimensional formulas. Let me go ahead and show you how three-dimensional formulas are actually set up. In this exercise, if you remember, I told you that all of the sheets were set up exactly alike. Each one was listing the items they were selling, the figures for quarters 1 through 4, and totals down in row 9. This area right here is the only thing that's different on each sheet because that's where the numbers are for each of the divisions. Now if we click over on the summary sheet, we're going to be actually putting the answers right in here. We're going to tell Excel to go to each of these 4 sheets at the bottom and add up B4 and then put the answer here on this summary sheet. Now a couple things to review before we actually do this. If you remember when we were in section 8 and we talked about formulas, one of the things we talked about was how to select a range. Remember, a range means you have a starting cell, you're going to hold the shift key, and then you'll click the ending cell so that it gets everything in between. You need to know that because when you're writing a three-dimensional formula, you're going to be selecting a range of sheets instead of a range of cells, but you'll do it the exact same way. If I wanted to select the sheet Australia all the way to South America, I'm going to make sure Australia has been clicked on. I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to click South America. And you can see the sheet tabs all look like they've been selected when you do that. If you type something on a sheet tab that's part of a range of sheets that's selected like this, it's going to be on every sheet. Let me give you a little example. I'll put Books and Beyond here. Now I've just typed it on the Australia sheet, but notice I can click North America and it's in the same place, South America it's in the same place, and so forth. I'm going to delete that, and then if you want to deselect a range of sheets, then you just go ahead and click a sheet not in the range. Now let me go back to summary and I'll show you how to write a three-dimensional formula. I'm going to start in B4. What I want to do is add cell B4 from all 4 of these sheets and put the answer on the summary sheet. You're going to start with equals so that it knows it's writing a formula. We're going to put in the function the word sum, which means add, and make sure you have the open parenthesis because remember all ranges have to be in parentheses. It's easy to forget that one step. Now I'm going to click on the first sheet that I want to add from. Then I'm going to click the cell I'd like Excel to add for me. And the only thing left now is to say add the rest of these sheets. To get the range, I'm going to hold Shift and click South America. Now I'm going to hit the Enter key. Don't click over on the summary sheet because then that will just replace whatever you typed in. I'm just hitting Enter and now I've got 900. Now let me open up this formula so you can see what it looks like. Notice it says you want to add the range Australia through South America, and on all 4 of those sheets you want to add cell B4. Let me do a couple more so you can get the feel for how this works. We'll do our software. I'm going to start with equals. I'm going to put in the function, in this case the word sum. Make sure you have the open parenthesis. Go to the first sheet you want to add from. Click in the cell you'd like to add. Hold Shift and click South America. Then just hit the Enter key. One more. I'm going to add the furniture. I'll start with equals. I want to have the word sum, which is the function in there, and then an open parenthesis. I'm going to click the first sheet I'm adding from. I'm going to click in B6, hold Shift and click South America, and then hit the Enter key. And you get the idea that you just do them all the exact same way. Now you can just do one and then use your fill handle to copy the others down. Once you've copied them down, then you can pick the fill handle back up and go across. But make sure that first one's correct because remember, if it's wrong, they're all going to be wrong. And this is something you just have to practice. Once you do 2 or 3 and you get it, you'll realize it's super easy to do. But just make sure you watch the video and go back through the exact steps that I did and you'll be able to do it perfectly. If you didn't have the 4 sheets set up the exact same, you would have to manually go to each sheet and tell it which cell to add. You wouldn't be able to do a range that way. Well, that's all I've got for you for Module 9, where we talked about working with those sheet tabs and the three-dimensional formulas. Let's go ahead now and move to Module 10. We've got a lot of formatting that we want to do on these worksheets to make them look nice.